I'd just turned 18, and the world felt like a giant city I hadn't yet finished exploring. That night, the club was a chaos of neon lights and music that made the floor vibrate, but my mind was elsewhere. Amidst the crowd, I saw him. He was 26, carrying a maturity evident in the way he held his glass and the calm in his gaze, while everyone else seemed desperate for attention. He introduced himself as Adrián. There were no rehearsed lines. He leaned in and spoke into my ear with a voice that cut through the ambient noise. It looks like you're also looking for a way out of all this noise. That phrase was the hook that caught me. We went out to the terrace, where the cool night air enveloped us, and we talked for hours. I felt drawn to his confidence, to that gap of experience that separated us but, at the same time, bound us in an electric tension. When he suggested going somewhere quieter, I knew my life was about to change. We arrived at a hotel on the 12th floor, with a breathtaking view of the city lights. The suspense was almost unbearable. My heart beat with a force that reminded me of my youth, while Adrian's calm gave me the security I needed to take the next step. Entering the room, the silence was dense and charged with an anticipation that made me shiver. He was in no rush. He took the time to look at me, to make me feel that this moment was sacred. He removed my coat with a slowness that made my skin crawl with goosebumps, and I knew I was in the hands of someone who understood the art of patience and detail. What followed was a step-by-step discovery. Adrian laid me back on the bed and began to kiss my entire body, from my shoulders to my fingertips. It wasn't just contact. It was a meticulous exploration of my senses. I felt the heat of his lips on my neck, and then moving down, inch by inch, across my belly, awakening a natural dampness that overflowed within me. What impacted me most was his dedication. With a rhythmic softness between my legs, he moved his tongue from bottom to top, tracing paths of fire that made me arch my back. He did it again and again, with a mastery that left me breathless and wet, leading me to a state of ecstasy I never thought possible for my first time. It was pure pleasure, a release where my body responded to his rhythm with brutal honesty. Every time I felt I was going to lose control, he would pause for a second to look me in the eyes, making sure I was present in every sensation. That total connection ensured my first experience wasn't an act of fear, but a discovery of my own power as a woman. The age difference vanished. All that remained was the chemistry and the respect of a man who knew how to adore my femininity. At dawn, as the city woke up beneath the 12th floor, I felt renewed. I was no longer the girl who entered the club looking for an exit. I was someone who had found her own center in the midst of passion. It was an exciting night from start to finish, a true story of desire and learning that I will keep as the map of my own awakening. The water continued to fall softly when everything went silent. It wasn't an awkward silence, but one filled with quiet breaths and looks that said more than any word. Mateo rested his forehead against mine, while the water slid down our faces, as if the sea had entered that small room to envelop us. Outside, the waves continued to crash against the coast of Lima, and the world kept moving. But inside that glass refuge, time seemed to have stopped. I didn't expect the day to end like theirs. I had gone out alone to walk along the beach, looking to clear my mind, letting the sound of the sea untangle my thoughts. And suddenly I was there, with a man I had barely met a few hours before, who nonetheless seemed to know every corner of my soul. Matteo smiled with that calm he always carried in his eyes and said that the best things are never planned. He turned off the shower, and the sound of the water vanished, leaving only the distant echo of the ocean. We took white linen towels hanging on the wall as the sunset light began to filter through a small window, painting everything in golden tones. There was something different now, something deeper than simple attraction. It was as if we had crossed an invisible door and now found ourselves in a place where the normal rules of time no longer existed. When we left the showers, the restaurant had a quiet, warm atmosphere. A few tables were occupied by couples talking in low voices while lit candles illuminated the woodwork. The aroma of grilled fish and lemon filled the air. We chose a table near the railing, overlooking the sea. Night fell slowly, and the lights of a few boats began to appear on the horizon, like small stars floating on the water. A waiter approached, and Matteo ordered 2 cold passion fruit cocktails. We toasted to unexpected encounters and to the tides that change people's paths. The wind gently moved my hair, and Matteo brushed it away from my face with a delicacy that made me shudder. We talked for a long time, as if time had stretched to gift us that night. I discovered Matteo was a photographer who spent long seasons traveling the coast of Peru, looking for unique moments to capture. Storms in the north, fishermen returning at dawn, birds crossing the sky just as the sun rises. He said the sea is never the same, that every day holds a different secret. And when I asked what secret it had given him today, he looked at me with a quiet smile and replied that the ocean had brought him something he didn't expect to find. After dinner, we walked along the beach again. The moon had risen, and its silvery light reflected on the wet sand. We walked barefoot, leaving footprints that the tide erased seconds later. I told him I'd always liked that detail of the sea, the way it erases everything, as if reminding people that it's always possible to start over. Matteo nodded and said that maybe that's why he returned to the coast so often. There was something about this place that always made him feel at home. We walked for a while without speaking much, enjoying the sound of the water and the gentle night wind. Suddenly he stopped near some large rocks from where you could see the entire coastline illuminated in the distance. He took a camera out of his backpack and said he wanted to capture this moment. I thought he meant the landscape, but he shook his head and raised the camera toward me. He said he wanted to capture the story the sea had given him that day. The moonlight illuminated my face, while the shutter clicked several times. Then he lowered the camera and said that moment was perfect. We sat on a flat rock, looking at the dark ocean. Matteo began to tell stories of his travels, nights sleeping in small coves, dawns on fishing boats, unexpected storms that forced him to stay in towns where no one knew him. Each story had one thing in common. The sea was always present, like a silent character watching everything. He said the ocean keeps secrets of thousands of people. Loves that began on a random afternoon, goodbyes that were never said out loud, and promises the wind carried away. I asked him what secret he had left in the sea. He took a few seconds to answer and said one that he still didn't know, how it would end, and then he looked at me with a quiet intensity and added that maybe tonight a new chapter was beginning. The wind grew a bit colder, and he placed his jacket over my shoulders. We stayed watching the horizon for a long time, while the waves kept breaking against the shore. The night moved forward without us noticing. We talked about our childhood, about places we wanted to visit, about decisions we had made, and others that still scared us. Suddenly, the sky began to change color. A soft blue appeared on the horizon, and then a pink tone began to slowly expand. Matteo pointed to the sky and said that was his favorite moment of the day, when everything starts over. We walked toward the shore as the first lights of dawn touched the sea. The waves seemed calmer, as if they were also waking up. Then the sun appeared over the horizon, a golden circle slowly emerging from the ocean. Matteo took another photo and then lowered the camera to look at me. He said that in all his photos of the sea, he had always felt something was missing, as if the landscape was incomplete. I asked him what was missing, and he smiled, missing someone to share it with. In that instant, the sun illuminated the entire beach, and the gulls crossed the sky, announcing the new day. And for the first time since I'd seen him walking through the sand, I understood that maybe some stories begin like this, simply and silently, with an unexpected encounter, a walk by the sea, and a dawn that promises this moment will not be the last. The sun finished rising, bathing the sand in a liquid fire that seemed to melt the shyness that still remained between us. Matteo set the camera aside on his jacket and pulled me toward him with a new urgency, one that no longer asked for permission. The sound of the waves, which before was a lullaby, became the savage rhythm of what was about to happen. There was no need for words. The cool morning air hit our hot skin, creating a contrast that only intensified the desire. He turned me gently, leaving me with my back to the horizon and facing the immensity of the sea, while he positioned himself behind me. I felt his ragged breath on my neck before his lips began a slow and possessive journey across my shoulders. The brush of his tongue on my back made me arch my body, letting out a moan that was lost in the wind. Matteo didn't stop. His hands, expert at capturing beauty through a lens, now dedicated themselves to exploring every curve of my body with almost religious devotion. He knelt on the wet sand, holding me firm in front of him. I felt the chill of the sea breeze, and the next second, the scorching heat of his mouth. He began to kiss me from behind, descending my spine, until reaching the inside of my thighs. The contact of his tongue, wet and bold, playing down there, broke any trace of composure I had left. My fingers buried themselves in his hair, while my head tossed back, offering my cries to the pink sky. We were outdoors, exposed to the world, and that vulnerability only made every sensation 10 times more potent. The world around us disappeared. There only existed the taste of salt on our skin, the rub of the sand, and the way he claimed me with every movement. Matteo moved with an intensity that seemed to mimic the strength of the tide, sometimes slow and deep, other times fast and desperate, as if fearing the sun would finish rising and the spell would break. The sound, my moans, now constant and unfiltered, mingled with the crash of the waves breaking just a few meters from us. The sensation, the heat of his body against mine, was the only refuge needed against the morning breeze. The culmination, when the pleasure finally exploded, it was like the dawn itself, an explosion of light and force that left us breathless, fused to one another on the sand that still held the cold of the night. We stayed like that, embracing, while the day finished waking up. The landscape, which Matteo had previously felt was incomplete, was now sealed with our story. We were no longer two strangers who coincided on a walk. We were two people who had found in each other the end of a search and the beginning of something much deeper. The sun was already high, the gulls continued their flight, and the sea continued its eternal ebb and flow. He looked into my eyes, his hair tousled and his gaze burning, and I knew that dawn had not just been the end of the night, but the promise that every day by his side would be a new opportunity to discover ourselves. If you let yourself be carried away by this dawn and felt the intensity of Matteo and his encounter on the beach, don't forget to leave your like. It helps us tremendously to keep creating stories that make your skin crawl. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next chapter of this story. There is still much to discover as the sun finished rising, and we want you to be there to see it.